A pregnant woman collapses mid-flight. Everyone panics except one 14-year-old black boy sitting quietly in economy. The millionaire husband shouts for help, but when this teen steps forward, he's dismissed. Until he saves her life right, there in the aisle. But what he asks for instead of money? It doesn't just shock the millionaire, it changes an entire community. You won't believe what happens next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story that proves kindness can change the world. Somebody help! She's not breathing right. The scream tore through the plane cabin like lightning. Passengers jolted in their seats. Some gasped. Others fumbled for their seatbelts, eyes darting toward the commotion near first class. A visibly pregnant woman had doubled over in pain, her face a mix of fear and agony. Her hands clutched her belly as her knees buckled. She collapsed into the narrow aisle. The plane jolted slightly. Oxygen masks didn't drop, but panic did. Her husband, a sharply dressed white man with silver hair and a Rolex that sparkled under the cabin lights, leapt from his seat. "Samantha! Oh God, help! Someone do something!" he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. Flight attendants rushed toward her, one grabbing the intercom, the other fumbling with a first aid kit, but no one moved fast enough. The passengers just stared. That's when a voice rose from the back. "I know what to do!" Heads turned. From the economy section, a small figure darted forward. A boy, 14 years old, dark skin, slim build, sharp eyes filled with purpose. Alex, quiet for most of the flight, now moved like someone twice his age. He dropped to his knees beside the woman as gasps echoed around the cabin. Her face had gone pale, beads of sweat covered her forehead, and her breathing came in ragged, shallow gulps. The millionaire husband looked stunned. You're just a kid!" But Alex didn't wait for permission. His hands moved with confidence, checking her pulse, tilting her head slightly, loosening her collar. "She's in distress. Looks like premature labor. We need to keep her calm and on her side." One of the attendants stepped back. "Wait, are you trained?" Before Alex could answer, a firm voice called from behind. "Let the boy help. He's trained for this." It was his grandmother. Her tone left no room for debate. The millionaire hesitated, torn between disbelief and hope, but then he stepped aside. Alex grabbed a blanket, gently propped up the woman's legs, and asked for bottled water and oxygen. "I need her to relax. Talk to her. Let her know she's safe," he said, addressing the husband with more authority than anyone expected. And it worked. Within minutes, Samantha's breathing began to slow. Her eyes fluttered open, panicked but conscious. "You're okay, ma'am. We're gonna keep you stable until we land," Alex said softly, his hand still checking her pulse. The captain announced an emergency landing in Atlanta. Meanwhile, Alex sat beside the woman, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth and speaking to her in calming tones. Passengers watched in stunned silence. Just 30 minutes ago, Alex was just a kid. Another quiet black teen in the back. Of the plane, earbuds in, notebook open, scribbling poems about life in the city. Now, he was the only reason this woman and her unborn child were still alive. By the time paramedics boarded and rushed the woman to safety, every eye in that cabin was on Alex, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with something new, respect. The millionaire stared at the boy, speechless. His hands trembled, his mouth opened to speak, but all he could manage was a whisper. "Thank you." Alex didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded once, then returned to his seat beside his grandmother, who gently squeezed his hand and whispered, "Your mama would be proud." While most kids his age were spending weekends glued to video games or TikTok, Alex was doing something else entirely. Learning how to save lives. 3 months earlier, he'd signed up for a junior EMT course offered at the local community center in his neighborhood. It was a no-cost program meant to give inner-city youth a shot at real-world skills. Some kids joined just to skip chores or get free snacks, but not Alex. For him, it was personal. He had grown up with stories of his mother, Grace, a kind, gentle woman who died during childbirth. Her photo still hung in his bedroom, and every time he looked at it, he remembered what his grandmother always told him. "She gave her life so you could live. Make that life count." That's why Alex didn't freeze when that pregnant woman collapsed on the plane. He didn't hesitate. He didn't doubt himself because deep down, he'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. As the chaos swirled around him, passengers gasping, attendants scrambling, a billionaire frozen in fear, Alex moved with purpose. "Get me a blanket and something to elevate her legs," he said firmly, already guiding the woman onto her side. His hands were steady as he loosened her seatbelt, checked her pulse again, and monitored her breathing. Her lips were trembling and sweat poured down her face. Alex leaned in close, speaking gently but firmly. "You're okay, ma'am. You're going to be okay. I'm not going anywhere." The woman, her name still unknown to him, tried to speak, but couldn't. Her fingers gripped his wrist as if clinging to life itself. "She's showing signs of preterm labor," Alex announced to the flight crew. "We need oxygen, and we need to keep her calm." The lead flight attendant, who had been trying to page a doctor over the intercom, paused. "How do you know that?" Alex looked up briefly. "I trained for this. Junior EMT Level 2. She blinked, then nodded. "Okay, what do you need?" Blankets arrived. An oxygen mask. Water. Passengers leaned in their seats to watch, stunned at the sight. A 14-year-old boy taking full control of a medical emergency. Even the millionaire, Richard Hayes, founder of one of the world's biggest tech companies, stood, frozen beside his wife, watching as this teenager did what grown men couldn't, keep his family alive. By now, the captain had been notified. He made the call, emergency landing in Atlanta. For the next 27 minutes, Alex sat beside the woman, adjusting the oxygen flow, timing her breathing, and gently wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "She's stable for now," he told the attendants, "but she needs to get to a hospital immediately once we land." The plane finally touched down, tires screeching on the tarmac. EMTs were already waiting by the jet bridge. They boarded in full gear, but paused when they reached the woman. One of them asked, "Who's the responder?" Alex raised his hand. "That would be me." The lead paramedic looked at him, then at the stabilized patient, then back at him, and he smiled. "You did good, kid. Real good." As Samantha Hayes was carefully lifted onto the stretcher, her eyes met Alex's. She whispered one word through her oxygen mask, "Thank you," and then she was gone. Wheeled down the aisle and into the waiting ambulance. The plane was quiet. Passengers who had stared, who had whispered, now clapped softly. Some stood. A few even wiped away tears. But the one most affected was Richard Hayes. The millionaire, still trembling, walked over to Alex. His voice was low, heavy with emotion. "I don't know who you are, but today, you saved the most important people in my world." He extended a hand. Alex didn't shake it. He looked him in the eyes and said calmly, "I just did what I was trained to do, sir." And with that, the boy who once sat, unnoticed, in economy class had become a hero at 35,000 feet. Hours later, the white walls of Atlanta Memorial Hospital echoed with quiet beeps and murmurs. In room 204, Samantha Hayes lay resting peacefully. Monitors blinked softly beside her, a rhythmic reminder that both she and her unborn child were alive. Safe. Outside her room, Richard Hayes, billionaire tech mogul and CEO of one of the world's most powerful companies, stood in silence. He looked like a man who had just been dropped into a world he couldn't code his way out of. His tailored suit was wrinkled, his hands trembled slightly, and his eyes, usually steely and calculating in boardrooms, were red-rimmed and human. A few chairs down in the waiting area sat Alex, the 14-year-old black teen who had saved Richard's entire world, and beside him his grandmother, holding his hand like it was made of gold. Richard finally gathered the courage to walk over. He stopped just in front of them and removed his designer glasses, tucking them into his pocket. "I still don't know how to say this," he said softly, voice cracking. "But you saved my wife and my unborn child." Alex nodded politely, eyes calm, humble. "I'm glad she's okay." Richard glanced down, clearly emotional. "I'm ashamed I doubted you. I looked at you and assumed you couldn't help. I saw your age, your skin, your seat in economy, and I let that blind me." He pulled something out from his inner coat pocket. A black checkbook with gold edges. The kind only a few people in the world carry. He flipped it open with a shaky hand. How much do you want? He asked. Anything. I can write any number. Just say the word. There was a pause. Alex looked at the checkbook, then at Richard. I don't want money, sir. The billionaire froze, confused. Then, what do you want? Alex sat forward, his voice steady but full of something deeper. Purpose. There's a clinic, back in our neighborhood, on 9th and Carson. It used to be the only place nearby that helped pregnant women. They offered checkups, prenatal vitamins, even rides for single moms, but it shut down last year when funding dried up. He looked, Richard dead in the eye. Now women go without care. Some lose their babies. Some lose their lives, just like my mom. Richard's eyes widened. She died giving birth to me. If there had been better care, maybe she'd still be here. The words hung heavy in the air. Alex continued. So if you really want to help reopen that clinic. Not for me, for the women back home, for the kids they're trying to raise, for the ones that haven't even been born yet. Silence. Richard slowly sat down beside him, staring at the checkbook. The idea of donating to causes wasn't new to him. He had foundations, tax write-offs, gala dinners. But this was different. This was real. You're asking me to help strangers? He said, almost whispering. I'm asking you, Alex said, to change lives. Richard looked down, swallowed hard, then closed the checkbook. No. One's ever asked me for something like that? Maybe they were afraid you'd say no. I'm not saying no, Richard replied, his voice thick with emotion. I'm saying yes. Yes to the clinic. Yes to funding it. Yes to naming it. After your mom, if that's what you want. Alex blinked, stunned. Call it the Grace Health Center, Richard said softly. She gave us you. The least I can do is make sure her legacy saves more lives. Tears welled in Alex's grandmother's eyes. She whispered, Bless you, sir. Just then, a nurse opened the door. She's awake, the nurse said gently. She'd like to see all of you. Richard stood up and reached for Alex's shoulder. Come on, you deserve to be there. They walked in together, a billionaire and a boy from the projects, now connected not by money, but by humanity. As Samantha smiled weakly from the hospital bed, she whispered, My hero, and held Alex's hand. And in that moment, Alex realized something. He didn't need riches. He didn't need recognition. He just needed to be what his mother never got. A guardian, a protector, a voice for the voiceless. 1 week later, headlines swept across the internet. Teen who saved pregnant woman inspires tech billionaire to reopen urban maternity clinic. Clinic named after hero's mother to serve. Thousands of women in underserved communities. Alex didn't read the articles. He was too busy back at the community center, signing up to become a full EMT. 2 months later, cameras flashed as a giant red ribbon stretched across the entrance of a brand new building on 9th and Carson, a street once forgotten, now filled with hope. The sign above the doors gleamed in gold letters. The Grace Centera, place for healing, a legacy of love crowds gathered, spilling onto sidewalks. Local residents, nurses, pastors, community leaders, and at the very front, Alex, standing beside his grandmother, dressed in his Sunday best. His hands were a little shaky, but his heart, steady. The clinic was more than just a building. It was a symbol. Free prenatal care, emergency maternal services, mental health support, and something extra, a junior medical training program modeled after the one Alex took. Now dozens of kids like him had a way to learn, to grow, to be ready when the world needed them most. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was broadcast on national television. Even networks that rarely covered stories from black neighborhoods were here, because this one had something different. It wasn't about tragedy. It was about transformation. When it was time to speak, Richard Hayes, the billionaire tech mogul, now visibly humbled, stepped up to the podium. His voice cracked as he spoke. 2 months ago, I almost lost everything, my wife, my unborn child. And the man who saved them was a boy I once underestimated. He looked out at Alex and paused. That boy didn't just save my family. He reminded me what real wealth is. Not stocks, not private jets, but forgiving doubt with kindness and asking for change instead of revenge. He held up a photo of the building. This clinic, the Grace Center, isn't mine. It belongs to this community, and it's named after a woman I never met, but who gave the world someone who saved. Mine! Applause thundered through the crowd. Some people cried. A few raised their fists in pride. Even reporters dropped their cameras for a moment to clap. Then the spotlight turned to Alex. He didn't want to speak. He never liked the attention. But as the microphone was passed to him, he stood tall, cleared his throat, and looked out over the sea of faces. I'm not a hero, he said softly. I just did what I was trained to do. People leaned in, hanging on every word. The real heroes, he continued, are the moms who don't give up, the women who carry life, who fight through pain and fear and still smile at their babies like nothing happened. My mom didn't get to hold me, but today, her name is holding this whole community. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Alex pointed to the building behind him. If just one mother walks through those doors and finds help she wouldn't have had before, then everything I've been through was worth it. There were no dry eyes now. As the ribbon was finally cut, Alex stood beside Richard and Samantha Hayes. She was glowing, her baby bump now larger, her face full of joy. She bent down and whispered to Alex, "You're part of our family now." And he believed her. Because sometimes family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you show up for. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the cameras rolled up, people didn't walk away talking about money or status or fame. They talked about a boy from the back of a plane who changed the future for an entire neighborhood. They talked about the Grace Center. They talked about Alex, and they remembered something that had been lost in a world of noise, that kindness, courage, and community can still change everything. A few weeks after the clinic opened, the story of Alex had gone far beyond his neighborhood. News anchors called him the boy who changed a billionaire, while social media dubbed him America's youngest EMT hero. But for Alex, life had mostly returned to normal. He still woke up early to help his grandmother, did his homework after school, and spent weekends volunteering at the Grace Center. What he didn't expect was what happened next. One Thursday. Morning! The loudspeaker crackled to life across Madison High School. All students, please report to the auditorium for a special assembly. Alex raised an eyebrow. Assemblies were rare. He followed the flood of students down the hallway, taking a seat in the back like always. No one told him he was the reason everyone was gathering. Moments later, the principal stepped up to the mic with a huge smile. Today, we're honored to welcome a guest who's flown in just for us, Mr. Richard Hayes, CEO of Hayes Tech and founder of the Grace Center. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Richard Hayes walked onto the stage. He wore a sharp suit but no tie this time, more human, more grounded. The same man whose life had been saved by a boy sitting in the back row. The applause was thunderous. "Thank you," Richard began, holding up his hand. "But I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about someone this school should never forget." He paused and looked directly at Alex. "Many of you know who I'm talking about, but you might not know the whole story. When my pregnant wife collapsed on that flight, this young man didn't wait. He didn't ask for permission. He acted, and because he did, my wife and son are alive today." Students turned to look at Alex wide-eyed. Even the kids who had once laughed at his thrift store clothes now sat stunned. Richard continued, "But Alex didn't ask for money. He didn't want fame. He asked me to reopen a clinic for mothers in need, and that's exactly what we did. But I realized his vision goes beyond one building, so today I want to honor that vision." He turned toward the principal and smiled. "I'm officially donating a state-of-the-art tech lab to Madison High School, equipped with computers, 3D printers, coding stations, and robotics gear." The room erupted in cheers. "But that's not all," Richard said, raising his voice over the noise. "Starting this year, we'll offer internship programs at Hayes Tech for students from this school, and 5 college scholarships every year for kids who show the same heart, grit, and brilliance as Alex." He gestured toward the stunned teen. "All of it. in Alex's name. For a moment, the entire auditorium stood still. Then, one by one, students rose to their feet. Applause thundered. Teachers wiped away tears. And at the center of it all, Alex stood slowly, hands trembling, eyes full. He didn't try to hide the tear that rolled down his cheek. "I thought I was just helping one person," he said later, to a reporter, his voice soft but steady. "I didn't know. One act of kindness could change a whole neighborhood, maybe even more." In the crowd, a few familiar faces watched silently. The boys who once teased him, called him poor, mocked his old shoes and secondhand backpack. They looked down now, ashamed, because they finally saw what they never bothered to look for before. His worth. His heart. His purpose. Alex didn't change to impress them. He changed the world without needing their approval. And now, the whole world saw him, and they saw a hero.